All right, let's talk about some of the advantages of seller financing in itself. Not of the business, but of just getting the seller to finance for us. All right? Anytime we can get a seller to take back a mortgage or a trust deed on their property involving monthly payments, we always get a lower rate with lower payments than if we go down to the bank and borrow money. Of all of the hundreds of loans that I have given sellers, never have I ever even come close to bank rate. Ever. Most of the time they don't expect bank rates, and when they do expect bank rates, it's very easy to talk them out of bank rates. If an interest rate is the most important thing on your seller's mind, there's a very good chance you're in the wrong living room to begin with. You haven't pre-screened your seller very well. You always have lower closing costs when you're doing seller financing. And the first thing, there's no points involved here. There's no processing fees. There's no surveys. There's none of that junk that you waste money on when you're going down to the bank and getting a loan. Closing costs are always less. No banks to deal with. The seller carryback loans do not show on your credit report. Even if you were to be dumb enough to buy one in your own name and sign the note in your own name, it would not show on your credit report. I'm going to teach you to use land trust to buy properties, to use land trust to originate notes, and you will learn how to eliminate personal risk along the way. There's a tape within this module all about land trust with all the agreements necessary for you to learn everything you need to know about land trust. Flexibility. That's one of the biggest reasons I love seller financing. No matter what deal I create today with an individual, I can always change it later if I need to. If things change, I can change those things with the seller. I can change the deal. I can change the terms. Anytime that I'm dealing with a person, there's always room for change. Try that with banks. They're not very flexible. No personal liability on seller financing. It solves negative cash flow. If I'm creating properties that I want to use for keepers, if I'm looking for deals that I want to turn into rental properties for long-term growth, there is no better way in the world than to do it with seller financing. Again, because of all of the other reasons, including the flexibility, but also because I can create a low enough payment when I've got the seller to work with by structuring several different kinds of financing plans to drive that payment down to ensure my monthly positive cash flow, even in areas like L.A. I get this all the time from people out in L.A. and California. You ain't going to get no positive cash flow out here. And my comeback to that is, if I'm not getting positive cash flow out there, it's because you don't know how to deal with sellers and create seller financing. There ain't a price range in the world I can't get positive cash flow from if I got a seller willing to work with me to create some seller financing to ensure that I do. Now, I ain't going to get no positive cash flow in L.A. going down to the bank and getting a loan and renting it out. But if I'm stupid enough to do that, I get what I deserve anyway, don't I? It's not the way we buy houses, folks. We do not buy houses so we can go to the bank and get loans so we have the privilege of becoming a landlord. We buy houses so that we don't have to go to the bank to get loans, so that we can become landlords if we wish and retire rich without grief and without personal liability, or we go create solutions with sellers that eliminate us from personal liability to begin with and also offer that flexibility that I'm talking about to change later. And I'm going to come up with some examples of that flexibility here before I'm through. You have no due on sale clause or balloons when you're giving sellers back notes and mortgages, unless, of course, you have to yield on the balloon to make the deal happen. If a seller insists on a balloon, I don't have any problem with it. I'll show you that I can give the seller a balloon, still make it attractive for my buyer to buy, putting the balloon far enough away where it's not a problem for them. And I find very little resistance to selling houses with balloons in them as long as they're not a week from Friday. It has not stopped me from selling. It has not stopped me from buying. As far as due on sale clauses, I am going to show you how to leave them out most of the time. Then I'm going to show you how to put them in if the seller insists and still make it a no qualifying loan. It sets you up for future profit centers by discounting. When you understand the true value of discounting, you'll understand that that is one of your biggest profit centers. And when you're dealing with seller financing, you get to close quickly, as quickly as the seller is ready. Now let's go into some examples of what I'm talking about here. And this is probably one of the most important parts of this course because it brings home what we say when we mean when we say seller financing. Again, I don't know how else to label it, but it does not mean that the seller takes financing back all the time. In our first example, the seller does. Okay, let's look at a few examples here to see if it makes sense for you to devote the time and the money or resources that it takes to do this business. Again, it takes very little money.